Hi everyone. We might make a start. It seems like maybe a few people are still at lunch or enjoying the demonstrations. My name's Steve O'Hearn. I'm an associate professor at the University of Leeds. And over the past few years, I've been a member of the FAME project, particularly working on Work Package 4, where we've been developing up the European Common Evaluation Methodology, which has quite a strong focus on achieving societal goals and societal impact. So today we have a really interesting session with quite a diverse range of speakers, looking at CCAM as a means to achieve societal goals. It worked. So in a moment, I'll hand over to Isabel. Isabel's going to give an overview of the EU-CEM, particularly focusing on the societal impact areas. Following that, we have invited 3 students from Aalto University in Finland, TU Delft in the Netherlands, and the University of Leeds. And they're going to discuss their views of mobility and how they think CCAM can address our societal needs. We also have a short video that hopefully will play that was taken and compiled from some of the activities we did with the students in the classroom prior to the event. As a sort of counterpoint, but maybe confirmatory as well, we've also invited some professional perspectives along today. So we have Teresa from the Czech Ministry of Transport, who I'm sure you all know from the previous session, and also Marcel from Aachen University, who's going to be talking about the high drive results that are preliminary based on the societal impact. Finally, to end the session, we have a panel planned, and Satu Inama from VTT will be moderating that session. So I will hand over now to Isabel to introduce the EU-CEM.
Thank you, Steve. Right. Next one. So first, some happy news. We had a sort of online ribbon cutting moment last week because the final version of the EU-CEM handbook for CCAM was published last week. So the European Common Evaluation Methodology for Connected, Cooperative and Automated Mobility. It's only a brief introduction for a very comprehensive method. And so I invite you to look at it online. The address is here, but we also have cards here with the QR code, which will make it easier to find it. So for whom did we make this EU-CEM? Well, it was primarily meant for professionals planning and conducting evaluations for CCAM projects, obviously, but it's also useful for project coordinators and proposal evaluators who want to get a bit more background about what's important for CCAM evaluations. It's for ex-ante impact assessments as well as for ex-post evaluations, and it can also be useful for design and deployment initiatives of CCAM systems. So while it's mainly intended for CCAM projects, it can also be useful for other evaluation projects, but for this we had a focus on automation in road transport of people and goods, covering all motor vehicle categories, so cars, trucks, shuttles, buses, and private shared and public transport. And we're looking at higher levels of automation, SAE level 3 and higher, because that is where we expect that societal impacts will start to happen. And it can be with and without connectivity. And its use cases on public roads with automated driving systems with a specified operational design domain operating in mixed traffic. And it stopped working.
Can you click into the
Oh, no, there it is. So something on the content of the EUCEM handbook. It has 5 chapters. Starts with an introduction. It's not on the slide, but the main content is in chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5. Chapter 2 is about the project preparation phase, which is when you lay a strong foundation for a good evaluation. And the guidance there focuses on how to scope the project and the evaluation, and how to have a good project structure and governance that supports evaluation. And from that, that should result in you having a good plan in the proposal or the description of action for the evaluation. Once a project has started, this needs to be elaborated into an evaluation plan. And for that, we have guidance in chapters 3 and 4. In chapter 3, it's about how do you get to that evaluation plan with things like guidance on how to describe a CCAM system properly so everybody understands what we're talking about, how to make good research questions, what approaches to take, what to do in terms of data collection and tools for that, and the experimental design. And so that should lead to an agreement on what data to collect and how. And then in chapter 4, we have the evaluation area specific guidelines, which I will go into in the next slide. And together these two should lead to a robust evaluation plan. And that needs to be, it needs to be a flexible plan, because these are often projects that run for quite a while and things might change along the way, and you need to be ready to take that into account. Also, it is an iterative process to get to the evaluation plan. You look at what you want to achieve, and then you look at whether that's feasible or not. You make a few adjustments, go back and forth with the other parts of the project. And in the end, you hope to have an evaluation plan that fits in the overall project ambitions and could deliver a good evaluation. Chapter 5 has guidance on the reporting of evaluation outcomes. So that is the moment where you reflect on everything that has happened during the evaluation process and where you document your findings and your lessons learned, and you share your insights with stakeholders. The box bottom right says feedback for future EUCEM updates. So for now we have a final version, but in the future we will make updates. And so for that we need feedback. So anyone that can give us feedback, we're very happy to get it. So these are the 18 evaluation areas that we cover in the EUCEM handbook. I hope you can read them, because I'm not going to read out all 18. But we have distinguished 4 levels. We have the vehicle level, the human level, the transport system level, and society level. And some of the evaluation areas that you can see here are usual suspects that have been looked at in CCAM projects in the past. And others are kind of new, but that we felt were useful for wider socioeconomic impact assessment. So, for instance, we have the usual suspect of driving behavior and also the user experience, user acceptance. But maybe new is an evaluation area like quality of life or services in operation in the transport system level. When we talk about traffic safety here, for instance, we are really talking about the societal impacts of, so not time to collision, but the number of accidents. The final section in Chapter 4 concerns the sustainability impact assessment. That is a sort of a cross-cutting or overarching impact assessment. So sustainability has 3 pillars: environment, society, economy, or planet, people, and profit. And but what we hope for with CCAM is that it contributes to a more sustainable transport system. And in order to be able to judge that, we recommend that you look at evaluation areas that are related to all 3 pillars of sustainability. So what's in all these sections in Chapter 4? well, there's an introduction where we define what the evaluation area is about, and also give some scoping as to what is in scope for this evaluation area, what is out of scope. And we give some background information, and then the guidelines are, we give a small set of 5 common result indicators that we recommend that everybody uses for this evaluation area. There are impact pathways that show how you can get to a certain set of indicators or an evaluation area, because a lot of these areas are interlinked. So sometimes you need one evaluation area to do the impact assessment there to get to the next step, so for the wider socioeconomic impact. The chapter also gives approaches and methods for each evaluation areas. How can you actually do it? And it discusses pitfalls that we have collected based on experience in previous projects, and also associated best practices. I think that was my last one. So yeah, so now we can go to the youth generation views and see which impact areas or evaluation areas or indicators they think are important to address in CCAM evaluations.
Thanks, Isabel. So yeah, like Isabel said, well, we spent quite a long time working on impact evaluation and identifying what areas we thought were important. But then we thought it was an important exercise to speak to the students at university and understand what they thought were important impact areas. So in a moment we'll hear from our 3 representatives, but first we compiled a short video from some of the other discussions that we had at the university. So I will endeavour to play this. Do I need to click again?
We don't want to focus on vehicles, but rather on like collective transport systems. That was an important point for us. That we don't have just individuals using a car, but just like individuals using the same public transportation collectively. Additionally, we also mentioned like pollution and sustainability. That we want just in general less pollutants from individual like motorized vehicles, and active mobility as well.
To make all modes except for cars as attractive as possible.
I would say like transport poverty is a very real thing also in like suburbia and peri-urban areas, where often like families do really need that car even if they can't maybe afford it. And if we could offer alternatives to that, whether that is a shared car or like some kind of maybe more autonomous vehicles that allow for children to move more independently, so the parents aren't so chained to driving their kids around all the time. Like I think that would be very important to get arranged in Finnish context.
How do we actually then implement this? Does it mean that we implement it in cars, and that can increase like suburban sprawl and have financial implications so that people only rich people have access to it? Or can we then implement it in a way that I feel like ideally would break down the barrier between public and private transport and create just transportation that fulfills your needs?
Thought if we're thinking about ideal mobility, perfect, right? So on one hand you can think the perfect car, get in, a door, it's automated, you don't do anything to say where you want to go, and as soon as possible you get out outside. On the other hand, you think what is the most efficient system with the walking infrastructure? Is that walkable or cyclable, or there's maybe some smaller scale public transport, or not super fast public transport? You can get around everywhere. And
so in our ideal mobility, for example, in the city centers, people could move by bike and walking, and also there could be a connection between the different city centers by metro. Maybe during the night there is no chance to have a public transport, so shared autonomous vehicles can be used to connect the city centers and outside of the city center to walk shared autonomous vehicles.
For me, the most important things are that the way I get around is safe, low cost, and affordable.
So my ideal mobility would include a mixture of good quality active travel and public transport modes over a range of distances in order to reduce the reliance on use of private vehicles.
I think it would be better generally if transport was focused more on public transport and active travel rather than individual car usage, as this is better both environmentally and socially.
So one of the main societal issues I've experienced is the disparity in accessibility between rural and urban settlements with regards to a higher reliance on use of private vehicles to access amenities, because the public transport provision and the active travel provision is lacking in quality or just not there. If there was a case where public transport provision could become more reliable, more frequent, or perhaps on demand through automated mobility, then I think that would significantly improve accessibility to amenities in rural areas.
Got jumped ahead. Fantastic. So now I'd invite Rosie to the stage, who you've just seen on the video. Rosie is from the University of Leeds. And if you just do that.
Thank you. I'd just like to clarify, I wasn't expecting my face to be that big on the screen. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about accessibility in rural settlements. And the reason why I chose this is because it draws upon my personal experiences of living in quite a rural area in the UK. So just for a bit of context, like many rural areas, the population is of low density. The settlements are quite spread far apart. In between that, there are a number of economic centres as well, but these are quite few and far between. And as such, this reduces the viability for frequent and good quality public transport services. So in terms of the issues with this, there tends to be longer travel times to access key services and employment. As you can see in the image on the right, the difference in travel time between rural and urban areas in the UK is quite large. In addition to this, where there are public transport services, these are often infrequent and unreliable. And with the two issues combined, this creates quite a car-centric landscape where people are more reliable on private vehicles. So in terms of the impacts of CCAM, I think, speaking at a very high level in general, I think it will improve the access overall in rural areas, more specifically by increasing efficiency of public transport with the potential for on-demand services as well in more remote areas. I also think with the use of private autonomous vehicles, this will improve utility for people using those and also create more productive in-vehicle travel time behaviours. And with those two impacts together, I think this is likely to have an impact on land use as well, in terms of the redistribution of amenities, which might improve access in that sense. And yeah, I think that's me. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rosie. Next, we have Nicola from TU Delft.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, first of all, to VTT and TNO and the EUCAD organization for having us here, because you recognize our voice, important to be here. So as you can see, what we had to answer here is a big question, and you can picture a student answer. What could be? This one here, total blank at the beginning, because it's very complicated. So we try to break this down into a few elements, for example, starting from the mobility issues. Let's see. Okay, great. We found different in the current mobility status. We started from the lack of properly designed infrastructures for public transport and bikes. And another problem about the public transport currently is about the inefficiency, especially for coverage in the suburbs, and the reliability. Sorry. Okay. This would actually leads to, especially in the suburbs, for users to be more captives of cars, and therefore to have car dominance in these peri-urban neighborhoods. Which leads also to problems about congestion and space shortage. These are all causes that can lead to other societal issues. And I think the most important, at least for our generation, are the following: equity, livability, social cohesion, and on top of all, accessibility of these areas. Indeed, I'm going to try to focus my speech on especially on the suburbs. And among all of these problems, I chose to focus on the cause of public transport shortage of coverage and inefficiency. But we see that CCAM can also step in as a solution to increase not only the accessibility of suburbs, but also the livability of those neighborhoods. So let me start pointing out a dilemma which is currently in the public transport, especially for public authorities and transport operators, which is either focusing the budget on strengthening high-capacity public transport lines, could be metro or trams, for example, but this leads to the less served areas of the neighborhood being a bit more neglected. But the other option is to use the public funds for low-demand public transport for the rest of the neighborhood, which takes out money for the high-demand lines. So maybe also at this point, the public transport is not enough appealing for users. Here steps in the solution of shared autonomous vehicles and as first last mile integration for public transport. And the most important features of it would be the straight connection from the home to the main stations. But also another important fact is that this service should be deployed with not just integration in the public transport network, but especially in the public transport service. So, for example, through integrated ticketing or fares, it could be easy to use for the users. Another important characteristic is the on-demand nature that also Rosie was introducing at the end of her slide. And the fact that it could be flexible or also with the fixed routes, depending on the needs of the users and on the neighborhood. And instead of parking slots, at that point, you can have pick-up of drop points. This will fix or maybe or at least improve all the mobility issues, but also the societal ones. So to sum up, This solution would address both the problem in the less served areas, improving the capillarity, thanks to the integration to the high-demand public transport, and at the same time, transport operators can still strengthen the strong-performing lines for a higher accessibility for everybody. And I think that, I will just conclude with this example of the application of this kind of service with the concept of low-car neighborhoods. In Rotterdam, they're developing the Merweehavens neighborhood between Rotterdam Centrum and another town called Schiedam. So it stands in the suburb area. And the role of shared autonomous vehicles here could be to cover the less covered area, indeed, connecting it to the main hub, which is a metro station, which is the purple spot. And in this sense, the neighborhood is designed as a less need of cars. Because you can park your car instead of in front of the house in the small pink mobility hubs. That are a few hundreds of meters away from the house. At the same time, you have no cars on the street parked. Instead of them, you have the pick-up and drop-off points for the autonomous demand-responsive transport. So more space on the street means also more space for infrastructure. So there is a different land use for active modes, greeneries, but also for social activities. Because you can imagine also a cabin glass there, for example, for activities of the neighborhood and social integration and everything. So we started from improving accessibility, but we ended up by increasing also the livability of the suburbs. And for sure there will be also more to hear about the last factor, it is equity, and Katja will talk about that now. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nicola. Katja, if you'd like to come to the stage. Katja is from Aalto University in Finland.
Well, thank you for that introduction. My name is Katja. I'm part of the EIT Urban Mobility Master's Program, currently studying at Aalto. When I think about automation of vehicles, I tend to think long-term and envision widespread implementation of driverless vehicles. So in terms of this conference, scale 5 or maybe 4. And I tend to look at a further future because the effects you can see are much more pronounced, which really emphasizes how vital the priorities and choices we make in incremental steps are. So the choices we make each step of the way really come into play into a much bigger scale. When we speak about automated mobility, we often jump straight into technological promises, such as smoother traffic, fewer accidents, and lower emissions. But we must stop and ask, for whom are we designing this future? What is the true goal behind automation? And who benefits? And most importantly, who are we risking being left behind? Mobility is not just about movement. It's about access to opportunities, to jobs, to healthcare, to education. And yet our current systems continue to favor already mobile people, while rural areas remain car dependent. People with lower incomes live further away from services. And those with reduced mobility continue to face daily barriers that most of us simply overlook. This isn't just inefficient, it's unjust. That's why I believe that equity must be at the center of how we think about mobility and automated mobility in extension. When we look at a specific example, electric vehicles, for instance, we've seen that the early adoption of this new transport technology often goes to the higher income groups. This is because the financial incentives that we provide mainly benefit high income people who could already afford higher-end cars. Simultaneously, we see that public, shared, and affordable transport options often lag behind. If we imagine the implementation of automation primarily as private driverless vehicles, we apply the same inexclusive path as we did with electric vehicles, we will not be solving car dependency, we will simply be automating it. Additionally, we risk reinforcing the same exclusions that are in desperate need of fixing. Let's take rural accessibility as an example. Yes, AVs could help, especially through on-demand public or shared transit. But we need to ask, will these systems be affordable, reliable, or accessible for all? Will they be designed with local input, or are we just replacing one type of exclusion with another? Then there's also the question of safety and trust. In low-demand areas, if you replace the human driver, what will happen to social control? Are we thinking about how women, children, elderly will feel using a driverless vehicle late at night where everyone can just hop on? Now, technology can be part of the solution. I'm not denying that. But it is not the one and only solution. The real challenge is not adding more modes or more options. It's rethinking how we build and govern the cities. That means investing in compact, walkable, and livable streets. It means designing streets for people, not just cars, automated or not. It means making active travel a default and not a luxury. And above all, it requires us to break through policy silos that keep us from addressing mobility as the deeply interconnected issue that it is. Transport, housing, accessibility, health, climate, these are not separate problems that require separate solutions. They require joined-up thinking, purpose-driven planning, and an integrated approach. In the end, we must remember that mobility is a tool, but it is not value neutral. It reflects decisions and priorities about who gets to move and who doesn't. And I believe that mobility should serve all people and support their quality of life. And if we want AVs to complement this and contribute to a fairer society, we need to be very clear about our goals and design accordingly. That means putting inclusion first, not as an afterthought, but as the foundation. Thank you.
Fantastic, thanks Katja. And I'd say another round of applause for our 3 students, because that was a great effort coming up and speaking. Next, I'd like to invite Teresa from the Czech Ministry up on stage. So now we have a bit of a, well, hopefully a confirmatory view of some of the things that our students have discussed.
Definitely. So, good afternoon to everyone. So before I start maybe introducing you what this Ministry of Transport of the Czech Republic is doing in the area of automated mobility and autonomous mobility, which is also closely related to social issues, maybe I would like to share some recent experience we gained through one of the workshops we organized within the State's Representative Group, and which was focused on social acceptance, because it's very closely linked to social issues. And if we have the social acceptance, then we can really fulfill all our hopes and needs for social issues that have been, I think, very well articulated by the students just before me. What was one of the important outputs is that acceptance doesn't mean adoption. And I think it was one of the key messages that we all brought back home, that even though the knowledge about the automation and automated mobility is rising, it doesn't mean people are accepting it as a solution to challenges, problems, maybe shortages in services that we are all experiencing. Maybe it's more important in rural areas or areas where the public transportation is not so accessible, but also in the cities where we are all fighting with pollution from transport. Just making the kind of example, Prague, the capital of Czech Republic, is known for polluting, for having a pollution almost solely from transport. 90% of pollution pollution comes from the transport. So you see the problem is already existing. Of course, there is another stream in mobility which should somehow help with that, which is a clean mobility or let's say environmental friendly mobility. But we also believe that automation and automated mobility can help significantly with fighting all of the challenges that are ahead of us, especially with living in a more healthy environment, having more accessible services, having more affordable services as well. That's why I see personally it's very important to discuss this within the stakeholder groups in the most extensive way possible, because we are the policymakers. For example, the Ministry, of course, we have a lot of discussion with industry, with academia, but to reach out to the general public, I think it's a crucial thing. Also in the sense of how to react and reflect the social issues that sometimes I'm not saying we are not aware of, but maybe only to some extent. So after this slight insight into what we have learned just recently during our discussions about social acceptance, I would maybe pinpoint activities that our ministry is doing in, let's say, developing and deploying automated mobility. Of course, we have the strategic level. We have a plan for autonomous mobility. You can also download it from our webpage. And it's basically structured within 4 main areas. First, the regulation. Second is, let's say, the technical and infrastructure area. But we have very important issues or 2 areas which is covering or that are covering research and innovation, and also social acceptance and ethics. I'm mentioning this because sometimes we are a little bit too focused on the technology itself and not on the social issues, not on the ethics, on the acceptance. But that's why we try to include and incorporate these areas into our plan for autonomous mobility. Of course, the plan is a part of larger transport policy of the Czech Republic, and it also somehow reflects the priorities that are set at the EU level. Speaking about legal environment, we just approved L3 legislation, so legislation for automated vehicles, but we are only focusing on level 4, fully automated vehicles, and that is in fact I think the cornerstone for enabling new services to emerge, because level 4 use cases, shuttles, robotaxis, are so closely linked to public transportation, to, let's say, more accessible transport, and to emerging of new services, mobility as a service, or last mile, first mile solutions. So we are now starting working on this. I'm also happy to hear that many other colleagues from member states are working on their L4 legislation and regulation, and also there is a strong push also from the European Commission on this. As I already mentioned, we are supporting research and innovation. We are now discussing how to support research in the next phase, in the next multi-annual financial framework at the EU level, but also at the national level. I think it's still important to have our own programs on research, also covering social issues. So it's not only about technology again, but it's also about psychology, social, economic impacts, ethics, for example, and also regulatory framework, or let's say legal area. What is important, I think, and maybe most relevant to our today's discussion and today's panel, is that we already in 2021 established Ethics Commission on Automated and Autonomous Mobility. I think we are almost the first one, or among the very first countries that did so. The Commission already delivered their recommendations 2 years ago. They are also accessible and available in English. So if you are interested, please go to the webpage of our ministry and take a look. And they are basically covering 3 main areas. Of course, the first is ethics, and then is, let's say, the technological aspect and also legal aspect. And among the, let's say, ethical aspects and ethical recommendations, you can find a recommendation how to include the automated and autonomous mobility into the larger mobility scheme and to make greater good. So first, and maybe most important recommendation, is that the solution we are delivering should serve the society and should serve the people in a positive way. It's quite logical, but on the other hand, maybe not always it's coming to our mind as a first thing that if we are speaking about technology, maybe we are a little bit too into detail of some technical solutions and system solutions, but we should always focus on this. So our Ethics Commission delivered 21 recommendations, but they are continuing in their work. For example, they also prepared a handbook for public authorities, how to approach automation and automated mobility, how to include it into mobility schemes, because now it's getting more and more relevant once we have already the technical solution to also focus on how to include it into existing mobility schemes in order to reflect the social issues. And maybe mentioning a very last point from my presentation is that it's very important, again, to include not only the stakeholders at the national level, but of course at the region level, at the city level, and of course at the, let's say, citizen level, because we have various groups of people. We have elderly people, we have people with some limitations in their mobility, and we need to speak to everyone basically about what is the rightest and the most effective way how to improve the mobility services, how to improve their accessibility and effectiveness. Of course, automated mobility is getting or becoming part of a smart city solution and also sustainable urban mobility planning. So we are also offering some kind of help and guidance to our colleagues at the regional and city level, how to include mobility solutions based on automation in the most effective way. I would conclude with this. I'm looking forward to some discussion and maybe also questions from you, and I will pass the floor back to Steve. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Teresa. It sounds like there's some fantastic work happening at the Czech Republic, and I think the realization that the technology is there and now we need to start looking at the societal issues and the implications of using the technology is one of the key takeaways, I think, of this session, which leads really nicely into our final speaker, Marcel from Aachen University, who's going to be presenting the preliminary results from the social impact assessment in the High Drive project. So I'd invite Marcel to the stage.
All right. Thanks a lot for the introduction. Let me check. Okay, yeah. Here, actually, I'm representing the High Drive project. So there I'm leading the work or the sub-project on the evaluation. So here's some figures. Some might know the project. We're talking about a very large project with also a lot of involvement of industry. So a lot of European OEMs are involved in this project. So you see it's a lot of partners, more than 50. And we're really looking there on putting vehicles on the road to be really able to test if we can extend and defragment the ODD. And I mean, we heard a lot about technology is there, technology is ready, and so on. And I would agree to some extent, but I think there's still a lot of work to do to integrate it, to check what's really solving issues, what is closing gaps, and so on. And this was one goal of the project. So we put a lot of vehicles on the road, but we also wanted to go beyond, because there we have some individual vehicles or also like maybe smaller fleets in some locations across Europe. But we also want to see what are the effects, the societal effects also when we go beyond. And this is what we are doing in the impact assessment. So this is one part of the sub-project that I'm working in. So there we try to get to broader impacts. And what do we look at? And I guess it covers some things that we already heard of today, but maybe not all. So this might be something to discuss. So on the one hand is safety. I guess this is quite clear. We're also looking at efficiency and environmental. So we're coming from this maybe rather microscopic level, then also to like a macroscopic level. So we're looking at what are the impacts on mobility, what are the impacts on the overall transport system, and how can we interpret this in general. And to be able to analyze this, we're not just doing like literature review or thinking what might be meaningful, but we're doing this based on some prospective impact assessment methods that use simulations to really see what are large-scale effects, because to assess those effects, we would need to have huge fleets out there to see what happens when we have like a penetration of 10% of AVs, 30% of AVs or so. And for now, we can just do it by simulations. But we're using this project to make this like valid and meaningful, because we are calibrating our simulations with real-world data. So we have data from the vehicles driving around here in Europe. So we know like how are they keeping distances, how are they reacting to some situations, how are they decelerating and so on. And this is all feeding into our models to have in the end common models, to not try to optimize or cherry pick, but really see what's the current state and what might it bring. And I will give you now like some sneak peek into those first preliminary results. If you're interested in details, the project is ending this November, and we will have a final event, deliverables and so on, you all know. So you can definitely also approach me in terms of some details, but now it's really about some broader things to feed maybe into the discussion that we have here. And as I said, it's rather preliminary. So one big thing is safety impacts. And I guess we also had safety a lot here, but also in other sessions. So we are looking there at accident preventions based on safety impact assessment approaches. So we can see there the accident prevention is highly dependent on the individual scenarios. So we have, for example, some reductions we see for on-ramp scenarios. So we can reduce it, for example, by 40%, the accidents that we have there, looking at our simulation results. But when we look, for example, at intersections that also use some connectivity, so it's like some collective perception, we can get a lot from it. So it's like reducing up to 90% of intersection accidents following our simulations. And actually this also matches with something we saw in one of the sessions where Waymo provided some safety assurance results, and this is quite nicely done. And you see here we're having different approaches, just some pictures from those simulations. On the other hand, we're looking at efficiency and environmental, and there we don't have that clear or extreme results we might have for safety. So there is some positive effect, definitely, but it's rather small compared to what we see, for example, in the safety. So the energy consumption might reduce a little, especially when we look at complex intersections where we also might use some collective perception, but also cooperative merging from motorway ramps. This is also something where we can increase some efficiency, because like the vehicles can negotiate and so on, and we can keep up the traffic flow. So those are the ones that or the figures that we came to by like microscopic simulations. But on the other hand, we're looking also on a broader scale. For those ones, we used really common models that we had calibrated together. On the other hand, we used other means to get to other impacts. So we are looking, for example, at mobility impacts, and this was mainly done based on some surveys, because we don't have large deployments that we can just analyze. And there were a lot of people asked in 2 rounds in 2 years, so like around 17,000 participants, I guess in 9 different countries, some from EU, some from, I guess, also China and the United States, for example, to get a broader view. And in general, like more than 50% would use AD for their everyday trips. And what's interesting, they would also accept higher travel times when they can use the time in the car. And this might definitely have some influences on the traffic. And we also see something interesting. So there's a slightly lower willingness to use those vehicles for like lower level of educations, lower incomes, higher ages, and people living in rural areas. And I guess this is reflecting some things we saw already from the students. So they're saying that we have some issues for those, but we also see that we're not maybe addressing those people in the right way, because there are some kind of hesitating. Might also be that they're, in general, having issues with mobility, and therefore are also maybe then hesitating to just believe us and accept those things. But it's definitely interesting. And we also use those results to then use this for a broader view. So we did like macroscopic traffic simulations. Here it was the whole area of Bavaria that was simulated with all the connecting roads. So there are also some motorways starting like from France or so, moving there. So it's a very, very broad analysis. And based on the results we had from the other impact areas, we see, for example, for 30% ADF penetration, that there might be a slight rise in the, or a slight increase in the vehicle kilometers traveled for those personal vehicles. I mean, it's quite slight, but you all probably know better than me when you're working on like traffic and so on, that those rises may also lead to some bigger issues. And this is why we need to really define or design it carefully. And this is why I'm looking forward to this discussion. Maybe I was able to already give some insights, but let's discuss based on it. And thanks for your first attention.
Thanks, Marcel. Now I'd invite Satu to the stage. Satu is going to take over the moderating role for the remainder of the session and facilitate the panel discussion.
Thank you very much. I also want to thank our experts and our brave junior members who were willing to join us, and I think it was really nice to hear their views. Now, before we go to the questions set for the panel, I would like to ask the audience if you have any immediate questions after you heard these 5 introduction presentations. So now it would be a good possibility to ask from the students or the expert members. Yeah, Wolfgang. Julia's microphone.
Thank you. Wolfgang from Ruprecht Consult. Rosie, Nicola, Katja, you really made my day. This was so nice. Thank you very much for the perspective. And Satu, I would even call them also experts, not junior members. Because I would really sign immediately to your perspectives. And I think a lot of cities and regions might also want to say, yeah, where can I sign up for this future? Not so sure if the car industry would also sign this future. But I fear the younger generation, we need too much time since Europe would be in the positions to pave the way for us and to create this future. But my question is, I know from my family reunions, when it comes to mobility discussions, it comes from cheerful atmosphere to hot-headed discussions with my uncles who are really car-focused. Yeah? So I'm not sure if you experience this also with your parents. Question is, what does it need to convince us as the older generations from your perspective? Quite a difficult question, I know.
Yeah, Katja, go on.
That's an interesting question, especially because you ask what does the older generation need to align with the vision. So I would be tempted to lie that question with that generation. But yeah, your question was asked. Well, I mean, if we talk about sustainability, if we talk about we want access for everyone, so that everyone has the opportunities that a lot of situations have, I think the first thing you need to do is convince the older generation that everyone does have that right, that mobility is a right that people need, and it's not just a privilege. But then again, I am no expert on the older generation.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for the question, and I totally agree with your opinion. I would just add on top of that maybe we were saying, yeah, technology is there, it must be refined, obviously, but we have like demonstrations and so on. So I think that also giving proof of this would be very important to convince people, also from our generation actually, but especially for the generation that always had maybe the same view about what could be mobility, not just for autonomous vehicles, but also starting from the concept we presented about accessibility, about different land use, starting also from, for example, converting a few streets that always been about cars into something different, so they can actually see that some changes are possible, can have benefits, not just based on data, because they are less tangible.
Kind of to reiterate what Katja and Nicola have already said, I actually think it boils down a lot to education, in terms of, we see these results with the High Drive project and many other projects that incorporate autonomous vehicles. I think publishing those results in a way that the wider society can see them as well, and not just in forums such as this, for example. But yeah, I think that way it would get more widespread, and it would open up the discussion certainly for implementing it.
Thank you very much for your answers, and thanks for the very good question. You are right that these are experts of the youth generation view. I'm happy to have 3 youngsters at home, and I'm happy also that these youngsters, they have a mind of their own, and they really stand up for their opinion, and they will convince us as one day. I really hope so, because I think you are absolutely right in what you said. Are there any other questions from the audience? Over there, Julie, can you?
Thank you. It's Luca Studer from Politecnico di Milano. I have probably a technical questions regarding the high drive evaluation assessment. Finding road safety with modeling is always very hard because modeling do not crash, or at least do not plan to crash. So what did you use time to collision or what to model the avoided crashes? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's a very good question, and I guess there are some approaches out there that try to come from criticality metrics like TTCs to actual crash rates, and I guess this is highly debated, and I guess for a good reason. So this is not what we are doing. So we are using like safety impact assessment or prospective safety impact assessment methodologies that work based on actual accident data as a basis. So we're having different data from different countries using as a basis. So I'm simulating, for example, with the GIDAS data that we are recreating crashes from. And there are different approaches that I could now go into to how to derive those. But we actually work on actual crashes to see what's the comparison then to human drivers. This is like the one hand. We're also doing some traffic simulation mainly on motorways. So BMW is there having like some stochastic driver model that is also including some measures or some mechanisms for failure, so where people look at and so on. And this also comes to actual crashes. So what we in the end count is really crashes from those automated vehicles that we modeled for our simulations compared to the human drivers that really been out there or also modeled in this comparison. So we're not coming from TTCs or so. This is like...
Thanks, Marcel. So I suggest that you two have coffee and discuss these safety-specific models. But Ingrid, I guess you could go next, and then the gentleman with the brown shirt, then after you.
Okay, I'm Ingrid Skogsmo from VTI in Sweden. Very great presentations, and I'm also very thrilled to have heard some young voices here. I was just wondering a little bit, because you rightfully point out the transport poverty areas and the problem with some rural non-city areas. I was just wondering of the solutions that you were suggesting and what was needed. Is really automation needed? Wouldn't it be possible to accomplish this with sort of taxi?
Sorry, I'm still thinking. Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that could be done first before automation, such as improving the infrastructure, getting on board with public transport operators, improving the reliability of services that way, and also increasing the frequency that way. But I think
if you lowered the price, if it was like an automated vehicle, but it was driven by a human, just to get it going and trying out dry running the theories.
Yeah, it's a difficult question.
Because otherwise, I fear that we have to wait for a very long time. So I'm just wondering because.
Yeah, I can try just to, with some not assumption, but conjectures. We still have some time to see them like implementing it in. So in the meantime, we can have other measures, but I think that one problem, for example, is the lack of personnel. Also, in that we also heard about during the other panels. So in some specific areas, for example, especially rural, it could be easier and also more cost-effective having these kind of vehicles. At the same time, I'm thinking about safety. Also picturing, for example, my mother being drowsy when coming back at night. It's something that you cannot, maybe she cannot afford a taxi. So also in that sense, having a taxi could be more expensive, and we are trying also to address the needs of the lower income people, even though they are quite skeptical. Sorry about that. So that's another issue. But yeah, there are different small elements which can be addressed by autonomous vehicles at the end, while in the meantime we try to put there into place other measures like we mentioned in the transport integration, in the change of land use, and so on.
Yeah, maybe I can also comment on this. I guess you also, Nicola, had it on your slide. I guess it's about like thinking this as a whole system, you know, and not trying to replace or so, but to have it in an addition. Because you also said it might be interesting to have some like serving of the big public transport lines and so on. And when we think of this also from a technical perspective, I guess there we could at some points, not everywhere, but I guess at some points also create first meaningful applications with still a capable ODD, not saying we will have level 4 with a huge ODD driving me from one town to another, but maybe having some smaller regions where we can really then come to public transport and making this all attractive. And then we definitely also need to work on the public transport itself, also from a longer time. So can we maybe, when we have the need for less drivers due to automation, come to maybe smaller sizes of the vehicles and higher rates than when they're driving and so on. I guess we really need to think this as a whole system. I guess it's a big challenge, so I guess this is what we're all trying. But I guess it's not going against this, and it's not thinking of either automation or not, but it's really thinking of where it has some potentials. And we're doing some analysis to see where do we have some potentials, and using this then smartly is, I guess, a good idea.
Thank you. I like automation. I really want it at the end of the day, but I'm trying to build our arguments collectively, and I think we have to be careful so we don't say that we urge for automation when somebody easily would say why. But thank you.
Katja, would you like to still supplement somehow, or?
I think most things have been said already, but yeah, I would like to reiterate. The thing is with public transit providers is they do operate like a business mostly, so they are very sometimes profit driven, mostly cost effectiveness is considered, and drivers do cost a lot of money. Now, automation is not the only solution, but it is within this industry and with how it operates on cost efficiency, one of the preferable ones. But we could also rethink, maybe we shouldn't let public transit run like a business, but maybe let it run like a household, where we don't focus on cost effectiveness as much, but focus on providing the best value for all people.
Thank you. Then there was also one question in the audience.
Thank you so much. I'm Louison Dubot from the Commission. Thank you for the different presentations. I think that one point that has been raised, especially by Katja, is a question that has been avoided for many years by the sector of automation, also in research in general, I would say. And it is the possible change of paradigm that automation can bring. And this change of paradigm question also our economy deeply. Because if tomorrow we question car dependence and how we move, it means that, for example, for car manufacturers, their business model needs to be changed. And maybe they will need to produce less car. However, car manufacturers are the biggest employer in the EU. They are the most important. They are a very huge lobby. And what I was wondering, and I totally agree with this vision, but I think it's not just about having words about it, but it's about how we convince that this vision, this huge change, societal change, is a good one and can bring values for the youth. So how we can convince OEM, so car manufacturer, and how we can also convince policymakers that we can create more value by this change of paradigm. Thank you.
Would somebody like to reflect that, Marcel? Do these things that we've been doing together with the industry, do they anyhow link with providing accessibility to all?
Yes, so maybe I can try to give my view on it like directly, and then maybe making it broader. So I guess in general, when it's about like companies, I guess it's quite obvious that it's about like business cases. And I guess in the last presentations and panels and so on, we heard there's also no more focus or a stronger focus on also analyzing this, what kind of business cases are there. And I guess the OEMs at some point will come, maybe they are already there into a situation where they see that also the classical business is not meeting all the demand that is there. So we're seeing activities from different OEMs, like for example also Volkswagen in Hamburg, where they also try to access like public transport, like step by step, let's say. But I guess this is something that at some point they need to react on this, and if they see those business cases that are definitely there, as long as we can have like large ODDs and so on, then I guess it can lead to there. And we also already now see, and this maybe leads over to a more general view. So for example, in high drive, we now have a lot of like classical cars driving automatically. So this is what they are now developing. But high drive, from the operation view, is a very technical project. So there it's really about finding those ODD gaps, seeing how can we tackle them, implementing the technology, testing it, and us checking, is it fulfilling what we expect or not? And I guess, I mean, it first feels like it might be only for the privately owned cars, and first you have it in a very expensive one, and in some years then maybe in the less expensive one, as we had it for some ADAS systems and so on as well. But I guess here it might be different, because this technology is to some extent independent of the actual use case. So if you're driving with a private car in like urban environments, or with those shuttles maybe, I mean, there are different implementations and so on, but we're also facing like similar ODD gaps, similar challenges, and we also see this from the OEMs. So many of those big companies don't only have like their classical car business, but they also have some commercial business. They also have some truck business and some bus business also, and they're also using the experiences from those projects where it's maybe a little easier to put those vehicles for technology development on the road, to use some learnings for this and scale this then up to other use cases that then probably rather enable such kind of societal benefits that we saw from the students' presentations. And I guess this is a way that could lead to this, but it's definitely all about that also the OEMs are committed to it, and I guess it's a difficult task.
Very good answer. Thanks, Marcel. Would you like to reflect that, Teresa?
I would also briefly reflect the question as well, as maybe also the answer. First of all, I think we should still keep on mind that it should be somehow demand-driven. Of course, we need to follow, let's say, our general intentions to reduce the pollution, increase the safety, increase the accessibility. On the other hand, we don't want to limit people in their choices. So our goal is also to provide more choices than less choices. So if you have more choices and then you decide, okay, this is the best for me, and we hope it would be, for example, automated shuttle service, then I think it's more acceptable than if we say, okay, you are not allowed to use your traditional means of transportation, but you have to use this one or that one. This freedom of choice, I think, is still very important, and we don't want to maybe repeat I'm not saying failures, but maybe some of the negative aspects of electric and clean mobility strategies and policies that unfortunately a little bit are leading to some reluctancy from the society to use EVs, although they are just brilliant. But still, some part of our societies believe that if there is something which is top-down, directively imposed on them, it's something bad. Even though it's in a broader context and in broader sense social beneficial. So I just wanted to maybe point out this, that still we need to speak about demand-driven solutions, of course with the reflection and respecting social needs. We want less cars in the city centers, we want more accessible transport services and so on and so forth. But please keep in mind that still there will be some people who would like to own a car, who would like to drive on their own, who don't want to use maybe services that we are now working on, and we would like to present as maybe the most effective ones. But for some people still, they won't like to keep their own choice on how they would transfer themselves from point A to point B. And let's keep this on mind, because we know that it could somehow negatively affect the adoption of the technology, adoption of the solutions. If we say this is the only way and the best way how to do it. So let's keep our minds open to that. Let's keep also the freedom of choices open to a possible extent. I believe personally also the industry is reflecting, in fact, what is happening in the change of appetite of users. So it's, as it was already said, not so much about technology, but about the solutions that are being offered to the market, and also to, for example, public administrations or public authorities, including public transport authorities and similar ones. So let's keep all the options open and focus on the benefits that these solutions can deliver to the society, but not close the doors to other means of transport or other ways how to make our transport more safer and accessible. Thank you.
Thanks very much for completing, Teresa. Over there. Julie gets heard 1,000 steps during their session.
Sorry, Marcel, I feel tempted to object your diagnosis that automation technologies are application neutral. I would even argue that the assumptions that they are application neutral is one of the strategic misunderstandings of European AV policy. Because for a public transport service vehicle, these vehicles work in a confined service area almost over their entire lifetime, and they leave that service area only once or twice when they're sold to other PTOs. The individual owned vehicle is expected to operate everywhere within Europe or even on the planet, which is a completely different technical and expectational description of what they need to be capable to do in order to fulfill these expectations. And to make a clear distinction here between those different use cases or application scenarios, I would say it's also helpful to form different strategic approaches for different development goals on the automation side.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm very happy that we are having like an actual controversy here. I guess in general, I say that it's like to some extent independent, not fully. You're right on some parts, but when we look at how it is now, so we are not, for example, from like the OEMs, what they are doing. It's not that they are working on now only like a personally owned robot taxi that is taking you from one point to another, having like almost unlimited ODD, so having like this vision then of a level 5 vehicle or so. It's also about having specific ODDs where it can operate. So for example, when we start with level 3, so we have some operations on the motorway, and they're also then abstracted to some, for example, level 4 use cases of trucks for hub to hub. So I guess this is where we can learn a lot, and we can use common results. So which sensors to work on which conditions, how do we deal with sudden ODD exits and so on. So those are things we definitely can also learn from those research on those classical cars, I would say. And I guess the same holds true for public transport. So also in HyDrive, we're having some operations that are driving in urban environments. And also there, now for the testing, they have quite fixed routes. So it's like 15 or 20 kilometers that they are driving in some urban environments. And also from this, I guess this can be also compared to some public transport use cases where you also have like a more limited operational design domain or like an operation area also. And I guess this is where we have those synergies. So I would disagree from your point that it's completely different, but I guess we agree on this point that there are some implications that are different, and this is why we also need to go beyond in some projects and not look only on very specific implementations. But I guess it's very important to learn from this, because also our findings on like the safety impacts and so on and the methodologies are not only applicable for personally owned vehicles, but also for other means. So I guess this is how we need to use some synergies, I guess.
Thanks a lot for the response, and I guess you two can have coffee after this and continue the discussion. Yeah, we have 10 minutes left. We have heard about the things which are really important. I see there. Would you like to respond to this immediately? Okay. So I will let that one go, and then I will ask you all of you to reflect on something here.
Thank you. And I'm from the PTA in Norway, in Oslo, Norway. It was a question for the younger part of the panel, the experts, because you guys are actually the experts on the future, because you're going to be living it. So to all of these discussions that we're having, if you guys could choose, I'm going to give you a choice for that future. Would you like to build more roads, or would you like to share more rights? Because that's the essence of a lot of the discussions we've just had. And you guys are the decision makers for the future, and you guys get to decide. And if you had to make that choice now, what would be your priority?
Yes, I would definitely prioritize active and shared mobility, as well as public transport. And I think one of the major challenges we also have to solve is within spatial planning, because if we implement this technology and everyone wants to, everyone thinks it's fine, I can live far away from my job, I can just chill in the car. Urban sprawl will really happen. We really need to find a way to mitigate that. So we need dense and compact cities to be able to realize active and public transit options that will also service all these people.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Actually, I would add, I think we are quite aligned, on the answer. transport that is in between the private one and the public one is indeed the shared one, which could make things more maybe for somebody easier and also more efficient. At the same time, I also agree that some users should be free to use maybe private means if they have such needs. Going back to the argument of Teresa, indeed. At the end of the day, the important thing is about listening to the users. So to try to understand what are really their needs. So also my message would be to really try to understand through surveys, through just talking to people from all the different clusters and profiles, not just, for example, the one that are willing to use, for example, such vehicles, to understand what are really their needs. And going back to the question before on the industry, I think that also it's a bit clear, maybe, the trend, at least for our young generation, about car ownership. For example, we are looking for spaces in the city where we can actually interact with each other. We are maybe more inclined to, in some way, active modes, knowing that there are other users that still have other needs. So maybe if the demand, so the demand-driven argument is still there, if the demand says we just need share cars, for example, or these kind of services or more active modes, then the industry and public authorities, for sure, they will try to adapt to this dynamic.
I would also go shared, without a doubt, mainly for the benefits that it brings in terms of environmental benefits. Sorry, I'm consulting my list. Economic benefits as well, in terms of, people don't have to buy cars, they don't have to insure them, they don't have to do anything like that. Health as well, in terms of active travel, walking, cycling. But I also think that if everything was going to become active and shared altogether, we've got to make sure that it's inclusive for all different demographics. So.
Thank you, guys. Can we have you guys design this now? Thank you.
I think we can start making business by hiring our future experts and providing them for different occasions. Thank you very much for your thoughts here today. We have 5 minutes left, so I would like to, now we are building the next programs for the upcoming years also in Horizon Europe projects. I think it would be nice to get from each of you one topic that should be researched, the key research question that you think that should be addressed in these future upcoming projects. So what would be your number one wish? Teresa, maybe you can elaborate a bit, having the whole member state had not just your own country, but all of them, and then everybody else as well.
Just one. Just one. It's difficult. Okay, maybe I would put emphasis on really inclusiveness of, or including the services based on automation into existing mobility schemes and solutions, because this is one of the main challenges, not only for us as a ministries, but also for cities, for regions, for basically everyone who somehow related to transport and mobility areas. So I would mention this, but there would be definitely more than just this one, but how to combine technological advancement of automated and autonomous mobility with the existing systems and schemes, and how to make it effective and safe.
Difficult question, but I would, be willing to take the challenge in the upcoming projects. What about Marcel, you?
It's a very, very difficult one. I guess what might be interesting also when coming from HiDrive might be looking at really the actual impacts when now moving from those analysis we had for rather individual mobility to this like new means of transport that are enabled by CCAM. I guess that can be very interesting, because we saw here now very low effects on efficiency. It's still positive. This is good, but I guess we can do more. So I guess this is very interesting to look at, and it might be also then contributing to what we see there. So it might be a chance to really have, based on actual information, actual data, like a clear vision how it can look like. And I guess based on that, we might also convince some people who think they might be losing quality of life when they need to know, or when they can't use their privately owned car, or when they don't usually use it or so. And I guess based on that, we should look there and see what effects can we have on the societal level, but maybe also on an individual level. And based on that, we might proceed from what we saw in HyDrive.
Thank you. Maybe we start now from Rosie.
I think one thing that definitely stood out for me from Marcel's presentation was the safety aspect of the autonomous vehicles. And I think it would be intriguing to see how different it is in rural areas in terms of the different infrastructure. So we've got single lane roads, passing places, lots of blind bends. So I think that would be the key one for me, seeing how that differs between urban and rural settlements.
Yeah, obviously it's a huge question. Picking one is difficult, but I think as I was stressing before, try really to understand the different needs of the different users, because we are all different. We are in different countries, different culture, different habits. It's not possible to have a single framework about everything. So in this sense, try to understand what people need and how the environment can be adapted to that, and the services, and how to integrate everything together, because we cannot clear everything that we obviously built so far. We just have to try to understand how to complement it. For example, so just thinking one example, the fare ticketing, or just using the apps to have something integrated together. It's something that maybe people really value, but in general, try to understand the people needs.
Yeah, it's difficult to pick just one. So I think I'm gonna bring in a lot of different elements. No, I would love to see, especially following your presentation, Marcel, since the amount of time that people would be willing to spend traveling would increase. I find that very interesting, and I would love to see how different types of deployment of automation would influence something like residential preferences, like where are people going to live in this future, and how is that going to shape our cities. Also, self-promoting. No, next year I have to do a thesis placement, so if anyone is willing to take me up on that offer.
Thanks. So now we have one volunteer to continue the dialogue, but I think the time is up. I think we want to give a big applause to our panelists. I think after hearing the last 90 minutes of the discussion, I think we all agree that we would really benefit of having more discussions with the youth generation, as the decisions made today will have a great influence also on the future, that they will then somehow shift and somehow plan and continue the work after us. But yeah, it's a kind of continuity of generations, etc. So definitely we should take them on. And I think we should all in our own initiatives and businesses and elsewhere to think how to incorporate the views of the next generations inside the work that we do. So thank you very much. We have here those of you who still remember from the beginning of the session, we talked about this common evaluation methodology. If you want to download it, if you didn't get the address, so here we have some cards where there is a QR code behind, so come and pick up one for you and to be shared with your colleagues. And also I was asked to remind that there are some demonstrations outside, so after the session, use the coffee breaks also to go outside and experience these. But thank you very much for the session.